I sold his life's work after he ruined my childhood. When I was 15, my world changed, and not for the better. My mom had started dating a man she met online. I remember the first time I met him. Something about him rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it was the way he smiled too hard, or how he looked at me like I was already a problem he needed to fix. But within 2 months, he had moved into our house and claimed it as his own. And from the moment his boxes hit the floor, it stopped feeling like home. At first, I tried to keep to myself. I had hobbies that gave me joy: skateboarding, BMX, building ramps in the driveway, and playing ice hockey. I poured my time into comic books, fantasy novels, and collecting Pokemon cards. That stuff wasn't just junk to me. It was my entire identity, my way of surviving the chaos around me. But he didn't see it that way. About 3 weeks after moving in, while I was at school, he took everything. My skateboards, the ramps I built by hand, my BMX bike, my hockey gear, all of it gone, dumped, tossed away like trash. When I asked where my stuff went, he said he took it to the dump because he didn't want all of my crap cluttering up his garage. His garage. That's how fast he took over. 3 weeks in, and he already talked like he owned the place. It was the first punch to the gut, figuratively speaking. But it wouldn't be long before the literal ones started. About 2 months later, it happened for the first time. I got up from the dinner table without saying anything, just quietly stood to bring my plate to the sink, and he punched me, hard, right in the stomach. I remember the wind getting knocked out of me, how I dropped the plate and bent over, trying not to cry in front of him. He said I should have asked to be excused, that he was the man of the house now and I needed to show respect. That was just the beginning. From there, the beatings escalated. Every tiny mistake, every perceived challenge to his so-called authority became a reason to hit me. A wrong glance, a missed "yes, sir." Even walking too loudly down the hallway could get me shoved into a wall or smacked across the head. He used to wait until my mom wasn't around, but after a while, he didn't bother hiding it anymore. And she never said anything. She just looked the other way. Maybe she was scared of him, or maybe she just didn't care enough to protect me. I don't know what hurt more, his fists or her silence. The worst part was that he didn't stop at physical abuse. He hated everything that made me who I was. My hobbies, my interests, my passions. He targeted all of it. One day he raided my room, took my Game Boy, my PlayStation 2, and every game I owned. He grabbed my Pokemon cards, comic books, even my sci-fi and fantasy novels, all gone, thrown out. He told me that 15-year-old boys should be playing football and baseball, not being some face-out nerd playing with toys and reading books. He said it with a sneer like I was some kind of failure just for being myself. But what made it worse, what made it feel like I was truly alone, was that this man was a teacher, a middle school teacher, someone trusted to guide and protect kids. In his free time, he umpired and refereed local school games. People respected him. They saw a man who supported youth and community. But behind closed doors, he was a monster. And no one knew. No one could see it. He wore a mask for the world. But I saw the real him every day. The one who tried to erase me piece by piece. Living in that house became unbearable. Every day was like walking a tightrope over broken glass. The wrong word, the wrong look, the wrong move, it all had consequences. My mom, who once used to pack my lunches and kiss my forehead before school, had vanished emotionally. The woman left behind was a shadow, someone who let him take over not just the house, but her will. He started telling her how to parent, and she let him. When he said I shouldn't get lunch money anymore because the little shit will just spend it on comics and other gay shit, she stopped giving it to me. Just like that. I went from having warm meals and a safe routine to sitting through lunch periods with an empty stomach, watching other kids eat while I drank from the water fountain and pretended I wasn't hungry. I learned how to be invisible. I tried not to take up space, but that didn't save me. At some point, I cracked. I was tired of the gnawing hunger that followed me every day, so I did something small, barely even worth noting in a normal household. I took maybe $3 and some change from the jar he kept in his room. I wasn't trying to steal. I just wanted to buy a slice of pizza and some fruit punch at school. I just wanted to feel full for once. But nothing in that house was normal. My twin sister, who had always been a little manipulative, always using blackmail to get out of chores, caught wind of it. And when I refused to do something for her, she went straight to him, told him everything. I expected yelling. I expected a beating. I didn't expect what happened next. He called the police. That man, my mom's boyfriend, a middle school teacher, a guy people trusted, called the police on me, his 15-year-old stepson, over a few dollars of loose change. He pressed larceny charges. I remember the blue and red lights outside, the way my neighbors peeked through their windows. I remember the handcuffs, the way the cold metal pinched my wrists. And most of all, I remember what happened after the cops left. That night, he beat me so badly, I thought I might die. I ran away. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have money. I just needed to get out of that house, away from the man who called the law on me and still had the nerve to beat me when they left. The streets were cold, lonely, and terrifying, but I preferred that to what I had known inside those walls. They found me, of course. The cops brought me back. But that wasn't the end of it. He had been working on convincing my mom to send me away. To military school, reform school, wherever they'd take a kid like me. And eventually, after running away multiple times and having that larceny charge on my record, they succeeded in getting rid of me. I spent my 16th birthday in juvenile detention. That place wasn't exactly better. It was rough in its own way. Loud, unpredictable, full of kids like me, all carrying their own stories of pain. But at least there, I didn't have to see his face every day. At least there, I wasn't pretending to be someone I wasn't just to stay safe. Still, those years nearly broke me. I spent more time thinking about ending things than I ever want to admit. There were nights I stared at the ceiling and wondered how a life could spiral this far down before it even started. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a thought began to form. A slow-burning belief that maybe, just maybe, I'd survive this, that I'd get out one day, and that when I did, I'd never forget what he did. I wouldn't forgive. I wouldn't forget. I'd remember everything. I wish I could say everything got better once I got out, but life after juvie isn't like in the movies. There's no celebratory moment where someone hands you a second chance. There's no magic door waiting for you with love and safety on the other side. For a while, I drifted. I took whatever jobs I could find, slept where I could, kept to myself. I didn't talk to my mom. I didn't talk to anyone in my family, really. They had all stood by while I was crushed. The scars weren't just emotional. I had to relearn how to trust, how to breathe without fear. But something inside me had hardened during those years. I wasn't going to be anyone's punching bag again. I started lifting weights, not for vanity, but for control, for strength, for the power that had been taken from me for so long. Every rep at the gym was a quiet vow. I will never be powerless again. Years passed, slowly, and then all at once. And then one day, out of the blue, I got a call from my mom. She wanted to talk. I ignored it at first, but curiosity is a powerful thing. Eventually, I picked up, and somehow we started talking again. It wasn't like we rebuilt everything in a day. There was too much between us for that. But we found something like peace. She told me she regretted a lot, said she hadn't known how bad it was. I didn't fully believe her, but I let her talk. I listened. I let her be a part of my life again, slowly and on my terms. By the time we found our way back to something resembling a relationship, she and that man were already married. Yeah, she married him, after everything. But by then, I wasn't the same scared 15-year-old he used to shove around. I was bigger, stronger, and sharper. And he knew it. I could see it in his eyes the first time we locked gazes again. He didn't try to intimidate me, didn't raise his voice or flex his authority. He looked right past me like I was a stranger at the dinner table. And that was fine. I didn't need a fake apology or an awkward reunion. I just needed him to know I wasn't afraid of him anymore. We kept our distance. I didn't speak to him, and he didn't speak to me. My mom would invite me over occasionally, and I'd show up out of respect for her. Not for him. He had learned to stay quiet, and I didn't push for more. But I could feel it. Underneath it all, there was something unsettled between us. A cold war that neither of us dared reignite. Yet, then came the diagnosis. Stage 4 cancer. My mom broke the news through tears. She had been tired, she said. The symptoms had crept up on her, and by the time she got checked, it was already too late. She didn't want to waste whatever time she had left with regrets, or with him. And that's when things shifted. She hired a lawyer and drafted a separation agreement. She was done with him. He would get a lump sum, and in return, he had 45 days to collect his things and get out. The house, which he had always treated as his own, wasn't even his to begin with. He'd lost it years earlier when he blew through his inheritance and had to sell it to cover his debts. My mom bought it back from the bank. She had owned it ever since. He was just a guest. He moved back into the house he grew up in, his mother's place, but even that came with a twist. He had already sold it once and only managed to buy it back with help from my mom. She'd saved him from himself. And in the end, she still cut him a deal during the separation. But once the papers were signed, she never looked back. She passed away about 9 months later. It broke something in me. Not because I thought she was a saint, or that our relationship had fully healed, but because she had finally chosen herself. For once in her life, she had said no to him. And then, just like that, she was gone. I didn't cry much at the funeral, but I remember staring at her grave, thinking about all the years she lost, all the things she let him steal, and I made a decision. He had missed the deadline to collect his things. Everything he left behind was legally mine, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. The law was clear. 45 days had passed. He hadn't retrieved his things. Anything left in the house was now legally mine to do with as I pleased. For once, I had control, and I intended to use every bit of it. Started with the most obvious target, his baseball card collection. He used to treat those cards like they were sacred, wouldn't even let people look at them too long, let alone touch them. He had them all cataloged, individually sleeved and locked away. Thousands of dollars worth of sports history, meticulously preserved by a man who never gave a second thought to destroying the things I loved. I took it all and sold it for nearly 14 grand. Next was the sports memorabilia, autographed photos, signed jerseys, limited edition gear from players he used to idolize more than any real human being in his life. I got about 11,000 for the whole lot. I didn't care about the value of the items themselves. What mattered was knowing that they were gone, out of his reach, in someone else's hands forever. Then came the woodworking equipment. That was his pride and joy. He used to spend hours in the garage working on tables, chairs, shelves, stuff he would brag about like he was Michelangelo carving marble. Sold every last machine. The bandsaw, the lathe, the carving tools. I even sold the finished pieces he had made, including a handcrafted coffee table that had his initials burned into the bottom. That one sold for $600. Total haul, about $6,500. But I didn't stop there. Some things I kept. His mother's engagement ring, a platinum band with 3 diamonds totaling around 2 carats. Her wedding band, too. His coin collection, which I now added to my own. I knew every coin in there. I had stared at them as a kid when he wasn't looking. He used to lock the box with a little brass key that he thought I never found. But I had. Back then, I never had the guts to do anything. With that knowledge, now the coins were mine. I also kept a few tools, not because I needed them, but because I knew they'd matter to him. A ratcheting wrench set he used to polish after every use. An old hand drill that had belonged to his grandfather. Sentimental. Things. I kept them out of pure spite. The rest? I trashed it. Tossed it. Donated it. Burned some of it. Every item was a little piece of him, and I made sure he couldn't reclaim a single one. And then, as if fate had been waiting for the right moment, I ran into him. It was at the grocery store. I spotted him first, pushing a cart through the parking lot, looking older and smaller than I remembered. His shoulders were hunched, his clothes sagging, his face weathered. Life hadn't been kind, and I knew right away I wasn't going to waste this opportunity. As he turned to put a bag in his trunk, I approached him, calmly, casually, like I was just saying hi. I told him I'd sold his collections. Every last thing. He froze. For a split second, it looked like his brain couldn't even process what I'd said. Then he snapped. Like I knew he would. He came at me swinging. What he didn't know was that I already had my phone unlocked, my thumb hovering over the call button. When he lunged, I pressed 911 and started speaking clearly, giving my location as he flailed. A few of his punches landed, but he was a far cry from the man who used to knock the air out of me with a single hit. I barely felt it, and the ones that missed, pitiful. He started ramming his cart into my car, my brand new Toyota, while I calmly described everything to the operator. By the time the police showed up, he was out of breath and red-faced. I stepped back, arms raised, while they arrested him on the spot. For assault, for threats, for property damage. It was poetic. Beautiful, even. That one moment triggered a domino effect he couldn't escape. He lost his job at the local middle school, the same school where he had spent years teaching and refereeing kids' sports games like some kind of role model. His pension? Gone. Apparently, his contract included a morals clause, and the charges were enough to violate it. No job, no savings, no safety net. But the story doesn't end there. The fallout was worse than he expected. He thought maybe he could talk his way out of it, get a slap on the wrist, maybe even twist the story in his favor. But this wasn't the same world that once looked at him like a community hero. People started talking. Parents started digging. And when the truth came out, everything crumbled. My nephew, his own grandson through my sister, was on the local high school football team. He made sure the story got around. Not just the arrest at the grocery store, but the part about how this man used to beat me senseless when I was a kid. Kids talked. Parents listened. Coaches paid attention. Before long, the school district started receiving calls. People were furious that someone like him had ever been allowed near children, let alone in a position of authority. He was forced to resign from all his referee and umpiring gigs. No more weekends in striped shirts blowing whistles. No more sidelines. No more sense of purpose. My niece, along with my girlfriend's much younger sister, were students at the middle school where he had taught. They told me how no one respected him even before his arrest. He was universally disliked, strict, cold, and always trying to dominate the classroom. He never had control, just fear. And when he showed up to collect his things from the school, thinking he could do it quietly, he ended up making a scene. Apparently, he broke down in the hallway, yelled at the principal, accused people of turning against him. Kids in summer school watched him spiral, screaming, crying, desperate. By the time he stumbled out of the building, red-eyed and incoherent, his legacy was sealed. Not as a teacher, not as a mentor, but as a broken man who lost everything. Even his own son, the one he raised with just as much violence and cruelty, as he showed me, refused to help him. Wouldn't return his calls. Wouldn't let him move in. The man who used to bark commands and throw punches now had no one left. No home, no job, no family. He sold his mother's house. Again. But this time, it wasn't to settle debts or chase new opportunities. It was pure desperation. He needed the money just to survive. He hired some high-end lawyer to fight the charges, thinking he could still win if he threw enough cash at the problem. But he lost. And now, with nothing left, he moved into a rundown. trailer in one of the worst neighborhoods in town, and that's where I made my next move. There are at least 4 Walmarts closer to my house than the one where he ended up working, but I never go to those. No, I drive the extra miles just to see him, just to make sure he knows I'm doing better, and that he's not. The first time I walked into that Walmart and saw him standing behind a register, wearing that blue vest, scanning groceries for minimum wage, it was like watching the universe finally balance itself out. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. I smiled. He tried to play it cool, but the bitterness was obvious. He rang up several of my items twice, trying to overcharge me. When I called him out, he said it was a mistake. I asked for the manager. The manager took his side at first, but it was enough to make sure he got a warning. The second time, he was outright rude. Didn't say hello, slammed items around, huffed, and muttered under his breath. So I smiled again, as nice as could be, and calmly asked for a manager. The people in line behind me backed me up. He got written up. I go back every chance I get. Sometimes I make small talk. Sometimes I pretend to be forgetful. I'll say I'm paying with exact change, then stop and say, "Oh, didn't realize I had one of your old coins in my pocket. I guess I'll use a card instead." The look on his face is worth every second. Last week I sold his expensive ratcheting wrench set. Tools he used to treasure, tools he would never part with. And this week, I've got plans to buy something. Big, a pool. One of those above-ground models that kids go crazy for in the summer. On Monday, when he's working the register again, I'm going to walk up with it in my cart. Let him scan it, smile, and say, "My daughter's gonna love this pool. It's not like I ever needed those wrenches anyway." Every visit, I see a little more of him disappear, a little more pride stripped away. Every beep of the scanner, every fake smile he forces, reminds him of what he lost, and who took it from him, and, the best part, I didn't need to lift a single finger in revenge. All I had to do was survive long enough for the world to see him clearly.
The case has been heard. The stories have been told. Now it's your turn to judge. Leave your verdict in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. The Court of Stories is always in session.